some things we can only learn in a storm, which my storm was my paralysis. All we have to do is stay strong, focused. The clouds will eventually part and the sun will shine. Remember, not all storms come to unsettle your life, but some come to clear a path. And I think my accident happened for me and not to me, to make me into a better human being.
Eugene Tejada, thank you so much for joining us on So Jannelle. First of all, your story is incredible, and I think you're perfect for this segment called So Bold. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. No, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be on here. I just want to be on here and just share my message with as many people as I can. And what better way than, the help of others. And I thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you were 26. You had just turned the corner in your career that would have been, for all intents and purposes, be the start of your rise in the PBA. And then all of a sudden, in an instant, it was gone because of an accident. It would have been easier to just, give up. And
Right.
you write this in your book. But what kept you going?
Um, Family, friends, for the most part. I wrote in the book, for those who've read it or haven't, that like after I got hurt, I was in the ambulance and it was coming from Antipolo, and I literally could have died in the ambulance because my body was going through some kind of shock or whatever. Maybe that from Antipolo, the roads, are so windy that it would cause motion sickness, and my head was stuck straight up and I couldn't look. So I started to vomit in my mouth. And this is the first part where I had to push myself and continue to move forward, was that I was vomiting and it was getting stuck in my throat. But when you have when you break your neck, you lose everything. So I lost my lung capacity. So I wasn't able to blow out the vomit. And I felt like I was going to die that day. But just the thought of my mom, my dad, um, came into my head, and with everything in me, I blew as hard as I can, and the vomit came out, which is partly why I continue to push myself. It's more for my family, friends, and for me. Back then was the doubters that say I would never amount to anything after this, and people who said I would just be a vegetable uh, in bed or in a hospital or in a care facility. Just doubters was a big motivation in the beginning.
Right. So for people that are maybe may not be familiar with your story, in your
Sure.
own words, how do you describe what happened to you?
So it was Mother's Day 2006, as I think you mentioned. We were playing against Red Bull. I was coming off an injury, just trying to get back in the flow of things. We were losing really bad to Red Bull, and my teammate went up for a layup. He got fouled. I got the rebound, and as I was falling, I fell, and someone behind me, Mick Panisi, who plays for Red Bull, who's a 6'8", 6'9", just big fella, and all his weight, his bottom, his butt, hit my neck, which snapped it forward and to the right, which left me with a C5, C6 fracture in my vertebrae, which felt like when it happened, it was just like a bunch of, when you crack your neck, it's like pop, 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 whatever. And it popped. And then everything, your body is connected through electricity from your brain through your spine. And it felt like I was shocked, and it felt like my hands were by my feet and my feet by my hands. It was just like, well, a hard drive or a computer going haywire. And that's exactly what happened to my body. And once it crashed, you felt that jolt, everything was gone. And the only thing I can move at that moment were my eyeballs.
Right. And that is why your book is called Ready to Rise: From Paralysis to Liberation. It
Yeah.
is it is an incredible story, but what what took so long? Why did you take so long to write it and publish it? And how did you know that you were ready?
This is actually the third time I wrote this book. I have two other manuscripts sitting in my hard drive. The first manuscript was really just basically a memoir written with a lot of hate, anger, and bitterness. And at the end of it, I didn't feel like that's what I wanted to represent. It was almost like I wrote it for everyone to feel sorry for me and to pity for me. and that's not what I wanted by the time I finished it. And the second try was it was me getting closer to my spiritual side, and I was hearing people always say you're such an inspiration for not giving up, and I was writing it to try to be super inspirational, but I felt like a complete imposter, not really living as an inspired person. Um, I just wanted try to validate what people were saying about me, but not really not living up to that expectation. So I really felt like an imposter by the end of end of book two. And book three was happened 2 years ago when I started had this visions and dreams of me of like a big shining light, but no one can see that light because my true self was hidden by so much trauma, pain, even accolades and accomplishments covering my true self. And I started to write this book to expose everything and uh, try to stop what's hindering me from my process of growth. And that's exactly what happened with this book. And it was actually from our mutual friend Anne who requested this book, uh, The Untethered Soul, which kind of made me realize that I have all these things covering me that no one really knows who I am. And actually, I didn't know who I was. It was just I was a basketball player who got injured, and that was my identity was all wrapped into that.
I like that you had the self-awareness to know, like how the first book was all about bitterness, and the second book was just all about, this knight in shining armor, this beacon of light and inspiration. And even then, you didn't want that. You wanted to perfect the message.
It's
Why?
not it's not that I didn't want that. It's that I wanted to be that. I was doing all the things. I was writing down and saying all the things that people wanted to hear, but
Mhm.
actually not living through that.
Right, right. So one of the things I love about your book, this book, now
Right.
that you mentioned it, is that yes, you talk about bitterness. There is bitterness in the book, but there's
Right.
also forgiveness, which is very powerful. You talk about forgiving Mick Benisi, the player that landed on you. You talk about your girlfriend at the time who betrayed,
Mm-hmm.
and other people that may have caused you pain up until that point. So you
Right.
write about different people in the book. Have
Right.
they all read it? And has anyone reached out to you among them to say something,
Uh,
to discuss the book?
I don't know personally if they have read it. I don't even know if they know I wrote a book. Just being so far removed from the Philippines and basically just doing kind of interviews from mostly the sports circle, and maybe Mick has. My ex girlfriend at the time, I'm not sure. We haven't had a conversation for so long. But I know there was a few teammates from Alaska who did uh, call me and say they didn't realize what they were doing. But I don't blame them at all because I was part of that life too. When you're part of a team or a locker room, you kind of have to keep it loose and kind of bag on each other. It wasn't really like I was mad at them at the time. It was when this process of writing the book, like I said, I had to examine and kind of what's the girl or what in Tagalog word himay, or like pull apart what was holding me back from growing. And um, I think it was just part of being part of a team is keep it light. But I didn't fault any one of them for doing that. But they did reach out and apologize for what they were doing. They didn't realize how much it hurt me. But like I said, I didn't realize it hurt me that much, or I held on to that in a conscious level for so long.
Right. Without giving so much of the book away, there's also a chapter where you talk about your father and
Right.
how he was this influential figure in your life, being a former professional athlete himself or basketball player himself. But then at the same time, that need for his validation, which you thought he never really showed you. Um, how has he reacted to this book? Has he read it? Have you guys
Uh,
talked?
I've given them the book. I've given him chapters to read before I even published. Not sure if he has, um, but yeah, I'm not sure if he has. But our relation right now is probably the best it's ever been. We're very open with each other. I think it really helped when I had children, just to have a relationship with him. But yeah, my whole identity, I think, of picking up a basketball was basically to find love from him. I feel he uh, was a person that showed conditional love, not unconditional love. But I know he unconditionally loves me, but the way he showed it was conditional. Like if, for me playing basketball, if I didn't play well, he wasn't going to be happy. But if I play well, he would be my best friend and do anything for me. But I'm not sure if he has. I've asked him, and he says he's busy. But my dad is my dad.
That's very typical of Filipinos, though. I've interviewed a lot of like achievers, Filipino personalities, and that's one of the things that they talk about, how like they didn't feel the love and support of their parents going through, their own journey. But then we know that as Filipino parents, I think maybe that's one of the traits that are not so good about them. They're not very showy. That
Yeah,
they're not very affectionate. And
yeah. It's still tough to say. I say I love you to my parents all the time. It's just that's who I am now. And then you say, yeah, yeah, me too. You don't really hear it, but they love you. They mean well. They just want the best for you. But sometimes yeah, you're right. They don't know how to show it or, you know, prove it to you in a much more positive way.
And the beauty of your life is that you're a father now.
Right.
And I know and I'm confident that you're changing that with the way you treat your twin sons.
Absolutely, I do. I treat him with a lot of empathy and like a lot of unconditional love. I have a lot of limitations that I still have to deal with every day, and just to see that they're patient with me and they understand like what happened to me. On the surface level, they don't know how deep it was, but they understand that I got hurt. Daddy never used to be in a wheelchair, but just by me living my life and how I raised them, I think when they get on they'll really appreciate how much I did love them and how much I do love them. And by the way, I did things for them and how I'm very vocal about how I feel about them. Like, I say, I love you a lot. You're doing great. Daddy's always going to love you regardless what, if you do something wrong or not. You just have to get punished for this moment because you've done something wrong. But at the end, the bigger picture is I love you with all my heart. And there's nothing I wouldn't do for you guys.
I love that, those words of affirmation. And I love that you talk about unconditional love, that you also write about in the book. You're talking about it when your current wife introduced
Yes.
you to that kind of love. And I think it's powerful. But I don't want to dwell on that because people should go get the book. It has touched me in many ways as well, not just because of my former life as a courtside reporter in the Philippines, but just the realizations that you point out. But I'd like to ask you, for the benefit of our viewers, since it is a new year and you
Mm-hmm.
have carved a new life for yourself.
Sure.
And when people are talking about New Year, this is the time when they plan a new life for themselves as well. What would be your top 3 things that maybe you can impart to us about making a new life for ourselves?
Sure. One would be to take time alone, away from the world, and examine areas deep within where you think you need improvement. Many times in life, we numb ourselves by staying too busy. We never take the time to actually heal from the trauma and the pain that forbids us from becoming better human beings. And we always hear people are human beings, but I feel that people are human doings always want to do the next best thing or do something else. But by taking the time to really examine what areas you really need to work on to be a better human being. Community, the people you hang out with, you can really mess up your whole life by just hanging out with the wrong people with no goals in it or ambitions. I felt like when I found my faith, I needed to change the people who I was hanging out with because I wanted to grow much closer to God. But the people that I was hanging out with, my friends or my close friends, weren't there with me. So I had to find a community or a group of people that would pour into me instead of me just pouring out into people. And our good friend Anna Spiritu was definitely one person that I leaned on a lot through my dark time. She definitely helped me find my way to God. So yeah, definitely the community and the people you hang out with. And lastly, I think the most important goal would be to set goals that are not self-serving, meaning being a servant to someone else. Like be a goal to mentor a kid going like in high school trying to navigate life, or be a mentor, or the big brother, big sister, group where they help underprivileged kids without fathers or mothers, and just step in their lives and help them become a better person. That would probably be my most important one, is to set a goal that it's not self-serving, where it helps your ego feel like you're better, but just to help someone else out.
I love those pieces of advice. So basically, take time for yourself, look into your community and build a community around you that will also
Mhm.
fill your cup. And then number three is set goals that will also serve other people. And
Yeah.
and just because we were also talking about fatherhood earlier, and still in this line of asking for tips, what about tips for fathers out there? Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of Filipino dads struggle with that, like not being communicative about their feelings, not being affectionate, the macho, showing the macho side and
Yeah.
hiding feelings inside. So what would be your maybe top three advice to fathers as well?
Just be empathetic. Your kid, you always want their best for your kids, and sometimes you measure goals that you haven't accomplished and you kind of pour it onto them. I know a couple of teammates of mine who read the book, have kids who are playing uh, right now, and they feel like the way my father was when I was playing, they were actually doing it to them. So my message of like, hey, we don't have to be so tough on our kids. We need to just love them and let them be who they want to be. We can't force anything upon our children, because then at the end they would just be very bitter to you for pushing them a wrong path, or a path they never wanted to take. Um, so that's one. The other one is just unconditional love, regardless if they did something bad, or you just feel like they're annoying or whatever. Just show them unconditional love and just always be there for them. Regardless, I know people will always be there for their kids, but that showing that unconditional love is by far a big measure where they can really feel it, uh, especially when they get older. Because for me, like, I felt my love was very conditional growing up. Uh, but I know now that I didn't know my dad's story. I didn't know what he's been through. So I can't blame him for that. He was just trying to do his best. Last goal, be patient. Let them fail. I feel like when my kids get a little older, like the question I'll probably ask them at the end of the night, besides like how was your day, is like, what areas did you fail in today? Because I feel like failing is the best teacher. So if kids continue to fail, they'll learn from their failures. But if you try to protect them and shield them from failing, um, that would be very detrimental in the long run. So I feel like failing is a good teaching lesson for children.
I love listening to
Not
you.
not failure in a way like they're gonna fail in life. Like, just try something new, try something different, get out of their comfort zone.
Exactly. Not
Should I say?
coddle, not coddle
Not
them.
don't coddle them for sure.
Exactly, exactly. And I like listening to you, as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of nuggets of wisdom. And you talk about this in your book as well, because you didn't start out this way. When you were in the Philippines, first year, second year, you were out in your wild partying days.
Yeah.
Um, but then at the same time, inside you were already numb to those feelings, like what happened with Alaska Aces when they were, joking around, making fun. You didn't realize it at that time because you were numb to those feelings.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
two of the powerful feelings I mentioned earlier that you write in your book are bitterness and forgiveness. A lot of us struggle with that, and you seem to
Right.
have overcome.
Hmm.
Are you still bitter? Do you still feel bitter? Is there any unforgiveness still in
There,
your heart for
there
any?
is there's absolutely no zero unforgiveness in me. I wouldn't say it came right away, because there was a lot of bitterness of seeing people playing that you wish that was. I wish I was still playing. That should have been me, kind of thing, or the PBA for not having the ambulance there and picking me up right away after I got hurt. No, there's absolutely zero forgiveness. And I think I know what helped me through that. And I don't want to get all preachy or too spiritual here, is just like how Jesus died for our sins. I got to forgive every person that hurt me, because that was the only thing holding me back from actually becoming my true self.
I love that. They say that unforgiveness is such a burden to carry. And not only that, it blocks blessings,
It
right?
blocks blessings, and it definitely affects your immunity, especially during this time. We need to have the best immunity possible to combat what's going on in the world right now. And I feel like if you're holding something, or you're still resenting someone, I think you just need to release it and let it go, because blessing and health will come your way, as it did for me.
So what else do you struggle with? Is there anything else that, like, so your forgiveness is done, it's been overcome, there's no more bitterness. Could there be perhaps like anger or
No.
impatience? Is there anything that you struggle with still that you want to
I
overcome?
think when you lose everything and everything life slows down, I became really patient, because doctors told me I would never move again. But obviously, I knew if I continue to work hard, that anything's possible. So, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
constant journey to overcome, bits and pieces here and there that hinder us from that growth. So what
yeah.
what, what more are you hoping to achieve this 2021? Wishes, dreams?
Like I said, we're in a pandemic right now. It's really hard to have dreams and visions for 2021. Everything is so unprecedented. You don't know what's going on. Like even tomorrow, especially in this country, where we have a big inauguration tomorrow. We don't know. The country is such in turmoil. All I want, for me personally, is to have my family be whole and healthy through this whole pandemic, because I haven't seen them in a year. I have a new baby girl joining me next month. My wife is pregnant,
Congratulations.
so she's due. I just want her to be healthy and everything runs smoothly. Professionally, just to continue what I'm doing right now with you, is to share my message of hope.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Congratulations. I was going to ask that, like more kids.
Oh yeah, well I got one more,
Right.
but this is the last one though.
All right. I know I have two, a daughter and a son, and it's
Oh
tough.
yes, it is.
Yeah. So, former basketball player, author, father, son, husband, friend, Uber driver, inspirational speaker, motivational speaker. If people were to forget everything else about you, what's the one thing that you would like for them to remember?
Fighter, spiritual fighter. I didn't let a bad situation crumble me or break me. Obviously, it did at one point, but I had to dust it off and continue to rise, as my book says, Ready to Rise, and continue to get better. I continue to fight every single day, regardless of the limitations I have. I still have a lot of limitations. I still use a wheelchair. I can't walk smoothly without crutches. And when I had kids, I'm in a wheelchair. I still I lost the ability in my right hand. This was my shooting hand. This was my moneymaker. It was gone. So I still have a lot of struggles I'm dealing with physically, but emotionally, I feel like I've never been. This is the best version of Eugene Tejada, and I think just with me continuing to strive to become better, my body will slowly manifest to the way I want it.
Let's end on that note of inspiration and hope, Eugene Tejada. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And may God continue to bless you on your journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a treat.